Welcome to another episode of Health, Wellbeing Lifestyle, where professionals in their fields come on to our show and educate the community, inspire them to live healthier lives, feel more balanced and live a lifestyle they love. Today our first guest is Helen Mac, and she's here to talk to us about optimising outcomes, and she is an optimising outcomes coach, so it's perfect. Helen, what made you come up with that idea?
Thanks for asking that, Linda. My background is in psychology initially, and I did a lot of work in corporate organisations and organisations of a variety of sizes, working on how do we get good outcomes from people and from individuals. My passion is actually optimism, and that attitude is what drives all of my work. But optimising outcomes is more outcome focused. So it takes the concept of optimism, which is an attitude or an approach, and it gives people some ways to approach their lives, their businesses, their relationships, their communities, to get better outcomes for themselves and for others. And it was driven from many moons ago when I was young. My mouth turned down when I was at rest. So I always looked a little bit unhappy. And so lots of people would sort of say to me, "Are you okay, Helen?" I'm like, "Fine." What I learned to do was tell my face. Have you ever met someone like that who's perfectly happy but they forget to tell their face? So I learned to smile, and I learned to teach myself how to have a happier approach. But happiness is temporary. Optimism and optimising outcomes is more grounded and more long-lasting. So I've now done a lot of research into the power of optimism and why that's an important part of the puzzle for people to get better results, whether that be in their health, in their lifestyle, in their business, whatever part of their life that they want to make changes. And there's really, in more recent times, I've developed a 3-step process for taking you from what am I going to do to what's the best possible outcome. How can I optimise this situation, or how can I maximise this opportunity? And that's, we have to go from thinking that something's not possible to moving to asking what's possible, and then moving through making choices to create best possible outcomes. So it's really a journey of inside yourself. And regardless of whether you're trying to make better choices about some part of your lifestyle, whether you're trying to boost your business results, or whether you're wanting your community to have a better outcome, if we take these 3 steps, we can all end up with better results.
Well, what happens with our brains? You talked about the not possible aspect. What happens with our brains when we say something's not possible?
Well, this is the really tricky part, of course, because as soon as we say something's not possible, our brain agrees with us and basically kind of closes down. So it says, oh, if you think this is not possible, then I'm not going to look for anything to help you with that. It literally goes on a holiday. It says, well, I'm done. This is not possible for you. I'm out. And so the challenge of that for us in whatever our goals are is that we're closing off opportunities. So one of the key pieces of optimising outcomes is creating opportunities. So let me give you an example from my personal life. Why is this so important to me at the moment? About 6 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with a terminal, incurable, only partly treatable condition. Very rare blood disease. My husband was always very special, and so he had a very special disease as well. So what that did was created a whole lot of not possibles. One of the not possibles was that our happy ever after was gone. We were going to live forever, die in our 90s, skiing off the edge of a black run, having heart attacks, tumbling down to the bottom of the ski run. All of our happy ever after was gone. We were faced with a heap of not possibles, things that were not possible for him to do or not possible for us to do. But if we stayed in that place, we would not have been able to move forward. Instead, we asked ourselves, what's possible? So that then sent us down arms of doing research. What's possible in terms of treatment? What's possible? Who's the best doctor? What's possible for him in terms of his activity, his abilities? What can he do, not what can't he do? And so that what possible question was critical to the process. It also meant that we had conversations about what might be possible for me going forward, because we knew that there was no happy ever after. He wasn't going to be here forever anymore. What was possible for me going forward? And so that opened things up.
And I suppose when you talk about that, what's possible, it's not only the thinking, it's the whole language and the communication you're having with everybody else.
With everyone in your world. And so regardless of what kind of relationship you're in or what your goals are, asking what's possible allows people in to help you. So you get better support if you say to people, here's what I'm trying to do, what's possible in terms of how you could reach out and help me. And so we had great support all the way through Lachlan's illness, and sadly, well, we lost that battle 3 years ago. But it meant that we had all kinds of conversations about how I would go forward. And I was in a community where people would come to me and say, how can I help? And what they were asking really was, what's possible for me to do to help you on this journey? So the what's possible piece just opens us up to possibility and to opportunity, which is just a beautiful place to operate from.
So how do we get the best possible results for our viewers out there who might be thinking, oh, well, I don't understand this, not possible?
Yeah. So once we've gone to what's possible, the lovely part about that is that we can then develop a range of options. We can look at what's possible in terms of time, resources, people available to support, money, where you live, all of those sorts of things allow us to gather options. And then we simply use a variety of prioritising techniques. One of the simplest ones is to, if you've got a long list of things and you're trying to choose, just look at 2 of them, choose which one you like best, and then just add 1 more in. People often look at a long list, oh my God, what am I going to do first? Just look at them in pairs, and by doing that, you'll be able to quickly decide which is the best possible for you right now. So best possible doesn't mean best possible forever. Best possible doesn't mean the only thing you're going to do. It's simply, what's the best use of my time and resources right now? And by having that approach, we will make better choices for ourselves and be able to consciously move forward into this idea of optimising the outcomes in your life, in your business, in your world.
Oh, thank you, Helen. And this is the first in a series of interviews with Helen. The next time she'll be back with Creating Clarity. And for more information on Helen Mac and optimising outcomes, then please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And now we'll go to break, and after break we'll be back with another interesting guest and topic.
Stay tuned. After the break, animal communicator and therapist Carolyn Pope talks animal communication and breaking down the barriers. Welcome back. Now we have Carolyn Pope in the studio, and she is an animal communicator and therapist, and we're going to be discussing animal communication, overcoming barriers. Hi Carolyn, welcome.
Hey.
Now I wanted to ask, if are different human languages a barrier to animal communication? So if you were working on communicating with an animal that wasn't from an English-speaking country, how does that affect things?
Only from the point of view, I sadly only have English. I don't speak a second language. Providing the person on the other end can also speak English as a second language, it's not an issue, because the animal doesn't speak a language per se. They use telepathics. So telepathics doesn't have a language. The biggest problem I actually find with my international people is simply some of the accents I can struggle a little bit to understand, and apparently I have a very broad Aussie accent and very few can understand me. That seems to be the biggest barrier.
So it's a human issue, not an animal issue.
It's a human issue, not an animal issue.
How does it work? How do you communicate with animals?
For those of you that have seen The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, great trilogy, think of the babblefish. For those that haven't, the babblefish was something that you put in your ear and it'd swim around and it would simultaneously translate any language right throughout the universe. And essentially that's what happens, because it's all about thought. If you're, say, a diplomat and you want to say something to someone who only speaks Russian and someone who only speaks Dutch, the thought pattern's the same. What you want to say might be the same, but the languages are different. So the animal's thought pattern to me is always going to be the same. It just happens that I only speak English, therefore I need another English speaking person on the other end of the phone. The animal doesn't have a language per se, it's all telepathics, it's all energetic thought.
How does the difference between species affect animal communication?
Hugely. That's the biggest job of any animal communicator, is advocating for species difference. You're not going to roll in horse poo and eat it, at least I'm assuming you're not. Your dog will. Dog's not going to jump on Google and Google animal communication. One of my cats once said to me, "Murdering birdies is good for my stress levels. You should try it sometime." Murdering birdies wasn't going to do anything for my stress levels. Drinking coffee wasn't going to do anything for the cat. And everything is within species. You can't blame a dog for being a dog any more than if a horse gets a fright, it's going to shy or bolt, because that's what horses do. And the biggest problem is people that consider themselves animal communicators that have no species awareness. I remember one lady, and look, she was a human psychologist, she was very good, but she'd been speaking to these people with this very, very troubled dog. And they told me what they were doing, and I just went, no, that's crap. You actually do the complete opposite. And within 5 minutes, that dog was lying down. It hadn't laid down for 3 weeks, because the signals they were giving to the dog was actually upsetting the dog. When you understand the species, you understand how to change your signals, because any animal's like a computer. They can only go by the information you're giving. And you're giving any animal information 24/7, 365. The problem is we're not aware of the information we're giving, because we can only see things from our species parameters. My computer guy puts it really well. He says it's like giving Mac commands to a Windows computer and going, why isn't this working? They're two different operating systems. A cat and a dog and a human have 3 different operating systems, and then add that to every species.
So could you please give our viewers some advice on communicating with their animals? Are there any general things to look out for?
Start with someone else's, because you're too close to your own. In the same way, doctors doesn't treat their own children, or a clairvoyant doesn't generally read. You need to know you're able to communicate, and you know your own too well. You can't detach what is you from what is them. And also you need feedback. You need to know whether you're on the right trail. I mean, having said that, sometimes you'll get something that's just so weird you couldn't possibly have thought it up. And that's when you know it's coming from the animal. But most of the time, practice on others and get others to practice on yours, and start with it that way. Because it's like, a kid's not often going to tell his mum what's going on, but he'll tell a third party. It's exactly the same. So work with that to start with and build up the relationship and the rapport from there.
When you say practice, like what sort of things would you do, say, with a friend's dog? What would you observe?
They might, for example, say, all right, here's a list of 4 questions. See what answers you get. And that's a good one for you. But they need to be answers that the owners know. For example, dogs in shelters. Any dog in a shelter will tell you anything it needs to get out of there rather than being euthanized. But also people like to get stuck in the past and, it's because he was a shelter dog till he was 6 months old. Well, yeah, you've had him 12 years and he's still a brat. What's your excuse? People like to keep their animals in victim mode, but they can't know what's gone on. So there's no point in asking what happened while you're in the shelter, or how many homes or whatever have you had before, when you're starting to learn, if the owner can't validate that, because they need to be questions that the owner 100% knows.
So that's you asking in English the dog a question.
Yeah, you might give me a list of 4 questions, and it might be, what does Fido like to eat? Where does he like to go? Some of his favourite activities. And then I'll take a photo and tune in, write down the answers and give them to you. And you can go, those 2 are right. No idea why you said that. I'll try feeding it to him, see whether he likes it or not, and get back to you. Because you need to know you're on the right path. And it's like a muscle. You don't use it, you lose it. But start with little bits, because you don't go out and run a marathon. As Tuvok used to say, you don't get out of a wheelchair and do advanced aerobics. You don't run a marathon to start with. Little bits and build up. And that's the thing. If I said to you, we're going to learn ancient Egyptian or Latin, no one's going to expect to be fluent in a day, and using the Egyptian, go in and read Tut's tomb. And yet everybody expects to be able to communicate fluently and instantaneously within a day. And sadly, for 99.99% of the population, it takes work. But the rewards are always worth it.
Well, that is fascinating. Thank you so much, Carolyn.
You're very welcome.
If you want to know more about Carolyn Pope and language and communication with animals, please go to her webpage on our website at healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And we'll be right back after this break with another amazing guest.
After the break, lymphologist Sean Connell is talking about fighting inflammation, so stay tuned. Welcome back, and next we have Sean Connell, our lymphologist, who's back with us today to talk about fighting inflammation. So Sean, welcome back.
Thank you.
And inflammation. So how is inflammation caused in the first place?
Well, the inflammation actually comes from our bloodstream, because our bloodstream's 91% water. So when we break the laws mentally, nutritionally or physically, it's going to cause more inflammation in the body. So this is why stress is the biggest killer. So when we stress, it opens up the capillaries of the pores of the capillaries, and too much of the water comes out. So if there's too much there, sometimes the lymphatic system can't remove that inflammation. So we need to help the lymphatic system to actually remove that excess fluid out of the area around the cells. So that's where a lymphologist and lymphatic drainage massage can come in handy, because we will activate that lymphatic system using the only 4 ways to activate it and move that inflammation out of the area. Then the oxygen and nutrition can get back into that area, and the cells can start to regenerate and heal. And then the white blood cells, the immune system can work, and the body can regenerate and heal itself.
Right. And so when you say it and what it does to our body, what does it do to our body?
Technically, inflammation's causing lack of oxygen. So without oxygen, we don't live very long. So luckily, we have up to 100 trillion cells in our body. So there's inflammation around that area. They'll start to break down and degenerate. So the sooner we can remove that inflammation out of there, those cells can start to regenerate and work the way they're supposed to.
So what other contributors would you say there are towards inflammation within us that can deplete our oxygen supplies?
Okay. So mentally, stress is the biggest killer. Getting angry. If you have an argument with someone, you're tired after that burst, because you've created inflammation in your body and it's created lack of oxygen, and then you're tired. Eating and drinking the wrong things. So everything in moderation, so not too much coffee or alcohol or processed foods. Go natural as much as possible. Improper exercise will cause lactic acid in the body as well. All those things will cause inflammation, and if the lymphatic system's not removing that, it'll start to degenerate and cause the body to break down.
So when you talk about the generalisation, do you have a particular example of a situation where someone's been affected with the lymphatic system with the inflammation?
Yeah, well, inflammation's the cause of every problem out there. So without oxygen, we don't live very long. So oxygen is the key. And if there's inflammation in that part of the body, no oxygen's getting there. So it's going to degenerate, break down and die. So we need to remove that inflammation. The only way is through the lymphatic system. And that'll create more energy and more oxygen in that area. We have a lot of people who have lymphedema, which is just the body's just blowing up, just with inflammation. So we naturally just activate the lymphatic system and greatly reduce that, and then allow more oxygen to get back into that area, and then the body can start to regenerate and heal itself, and they lose a lot of weight, because over 50 kilos you can hold of just inflammation in the body.
Is that true for anybody who has that sort of swelling in their body, or are there just certain situations where it...
Yeah, if anything goes wrong in the body, all that's happening is there's inflammation in that area, and the lymphatic system's not working in that area. So once you activate the lymphatic system in that area, you're going to get more oxygen, more nutrition in there, and the cells in the body can start to regenerate and heal itself. So what's causing the lymphedema and the inflammation in the body is we have blood proteins in our bloodstream. And now their goal is to keep the water in the bloodstream. But as I said before, when we break the laws mentally, nutritionally or physically, these proteins come out much more than they should, and they pull a lot of that inflammation, the water, out of the bloodstream. And that's what's causing the inflammation in the body. So the only way to remove that inflammation is by activating the lymphatic system, removing those blood proteins back to the bloodstream, keeping the water in the bloodstream.
And then when you're saying those four systems, also the technology that you've mentioned before.
Yeah.
Yes. Is that technology sort of widely available?
Not many people know about it. It's not that widely. There's some doctors around the world using it, but it's very unknown.
Well, and how would you say, what would your best advice for our viewers be around fighting inflammation?
Well, the number one thing we have to do is activate the lymphatic system. As we said before, there's 4 ways to activate the lymphatic system: deep breathing, bouncing, stroking, energy. You're required to get 30 minutes of aerobic exercise every day. Walking, do your deep breathing while you're walking, or if you're with someone, you're talking. So you're doing the breathing naturally by just talking. So don't be the one that's just not talking, talk as well. So obviously see professionals out there, they're the experts in the field, so they'll do that. But at home, you got your deep breathing, bouncing, stroking, energy. You can do all these things at home to help activate that lymphatic system. But professionals out there have technology now that's way out of this world that really, really activates the lymphatic system, remove a lot of that inflammation. You're going to drop a lot of weight, you're going to have more energy, your body's going to work the way it's supposed to, it's going to regenerate, you're going to get younger, you're going to feel really, really good.
Thank you so much for that, Sean. And for more information on Sean Connell and fighting inflammation, then please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au, and we'll say bye for now and see you next week. If you'd like to know more about our show, please like our Facebook page and also subscribe to our YouTube channel.